Good morning, class. How are you doing? This is Mrs. Ramirez. I'm doing well. As you can see, I'm still at home. This is our third video lesson. This will be our last one. Let's look at the objectives for today. This lesson is for Saturday, April 18, 2020. We will review Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4. Let's begin. Chapter 1 begins with a simple present, and that expresses daily habits or usual activities. When we look at the simple present, look at third person. In third person, the verb ends with an S. She works, he works, it works. When we use negative, we use do or does. Look again at third person. In third person, we use does. She does not work, he does not work, it does not work. When we write questions, again, third person, we start with the auxiliary do or does, but in third person, we use does. Does she work? Does he work? Does it work? So again, in simple present, be careful with third person. All right, let's go into the present progressive. The present progressive is used to express an activity that is in progress right now. How do we form the present progressive? We start with the be verb, and then we add the main verb with ing. For example, when we talk about the be verb, we're talking about am, is, or are. The main verb is work. We add ing to it. So it's am working, is working, are working. In negative, am not working, is not working, are not working. You can make the contractions. Isn't, aren't. When you form questions, you start with the be verb. Am, is, or are. Am I working? Is he working? Are they working? We continue to 1-4. Again, to review third person, some of the verbs are going to end with S. Visits, speaks. Another rule is that if the verb ends with CH, SH, S, X, or Z, we add ES. For example, catch, catches. Wash, washes. Miss, misses. Fix, fixes. Buzz, buzzes. In 1-5, we study frequency adverbs. There's several of them, but here I'm just going to focus on the frequency adverb always. I want you to notice the location. Look at the first sentence. Karen always tells the truth. So it's a subject, and then always, and then the verb. The second sentence, Karen is always on time. This is using the be verb. When you have the be verb, it's a little bit different. You have the subject, the be verb. You have the subject, the be verb, and then always. So study the locations. Okay, chapter 2 goes into the simple past. When we look at the simple past, if the verbs are regular, all we do is get the verb and add ed. For example, I walked, you walked, he walked, we walked, they walked. In questions with the simple past, you start with did. And remember that we talked about whenever we use did, the verb is always in simple form. Did I walk? Did you walk? Did she walk? Did we walk? Did they walk? Okay? If we go into 2-3, they give you a list of the common irregular verbs. Make sure you go back and study those irregular verbs. We go into 2-6, which is the past progressive, and we use that. It's activities, an activity that was in progress at a particular time in the past. So it was in progress at a certain time in the past. Okay? So how do we make the past progressive? We use was or were plus the verb with ing. And here we have I was working, she was working, he was working, it was working. And then we have you were working, we were working, they were working. If we want to make it negative, we use was not or were not. The contraction for was not, was it. The contraction for were not, weren't. Okay, there's 2 sentences there. And these sentences have 2 clauses. They have a time clause and a main clause. Okay, time clauses begin with a time word. When is a time word. While is a time word. Let's look at the first one. When the phone rang, comma, I was sleeping. Okay, so the time clause is when the phone rang. That is in simple past. I was sleeping is in past what? Progressive. Yes, past progressive. The phone rang while I was sleeping. The time word is while I was sleeping. Okay? While I was sleeping is in what tense? In past progressive. The main clause, the phone rang, is in simple past. Okay. When we have time clauses, they usually begin, or they always begin with a time clause word. And the time clause words are after, before, until, as soon as, while, and when. You can go back to 2-8 to practice time clauses. Let's go to 2.9. And we continue with past habits using used to. Whenever we use used to, the verb that follows is in simple form. All right, let's continue with chapter 3. Chapter 3 is talking about future time. And we're going to be working with be going to and will. We use those to talk about the future. We can use either one, be going to or will, when we're making predictions. When we say be going to, be, we're talking again about am, is, or are. Be going to, what follows? Simple form of the verb. when we want to talk about negative, okay, we can say isn't going to or wasn't going to. With questions, you start with the be verb. Are you going to drive home? Is he going to drive home? When we use the verb will follows what? Simple form of the verb. If we want to make it negative, we use will not. And the contraction for will not is won't. Will you drive home? Will he drive home? Notice that the verb drive is in simple form. Over here in the questions with be going to, are you going to drive home? Drive again is in simple form. Is he going to drive home? Also in simple form. Okay. When we are talking about a plan, a prior plan, we use be going to. We use be going to when we have a prior plan. For example, she's going to drive to her doctor's appointment. We know that there was a plan. She had to call her doctor and make an appointment. So we use be going to. We use will when we make the decision or the decision is made at the last minute. You see somebody walking that's carrying heavy bags and you say, I will help you with these heavy bags, or I will help you with those heavy bags. That was a last minute decision. So you use will. So will is used for last minute decisions. Be going to is used with a plan, a prior plan. We continue with future tenses and, future time clauses and if clauses. And we're going to be using the time words before, after, when, as soon as, until, and while. Let me get closer. Okay, so these sentences are going to have two clauses, a time clause, and the time clause is going to be in present tense, and the main clause. And the main clause is going to be in future tense. Let's look at the first one. Before I go home tonight, comma, I am going to stop at the store. The first clause, which is a time clause, before I go home is in present. Go is in present. I am going to stop at the store. The main clause is in future. Number 2, I will give Rita your message when I see her. When I see her is a time clause. See is in present tense. I will give is in future. Number 3 is an if clause. If it rains tomorrow, comma, I am going to stay home. So if it rains tomorrow, that's in present. I am going to stay home, that's in future. Notice that when the time clause is at the beginning of the sentence, you use a comma. All right, 311 is parallel verbs. And this is when you have a sentence that has one subject and two verbs. And the two verbs are connected with and. The two verbs are in the same tense. For example, Jim makes his bed and cleans up his room. Makes and cleans are both in present, and they're connected with the word and. Jim makes and cleans. Look at the second one. Anne is cooking and talking on the phone. Okay, it is not necessary to repeat the helping verb. So you could say Anne is cooking and talking on the phone. But if you say is talking, that would be correct, but it's not necessary. So this is a review of chapter 3. Let's go to chapter 4. Chapter 4 begins with the present perfect. And actually, this is going to be the present perfect and the past perfect. In order to do the present perfect or the past perfect, you need to learn the past participle of verbs. Remember that the past participles of the verbs are in your book. They're at the end of the book on the last page, the inside cover. Okay, let's look at the regular verbs. If you look at the first verb, look, and then it says looked in simple past, and looked is the past participle. Well, the simple past and the past participle are the same. The next verb, use, used, used. The simple past and the past participle are the same. Try, tried, tried. Tried and tried. Simple past and past participle are the same. So when you have a regular verb, the past participle is just like the simple past. Now, where we need to study the irregular verbs. Look at the first one, be. So the simple past is was or were. The past participle is been. Do. Past, did. Past participle, done. Go, went, gone. Have, had, and had. Okay, the present perfect, how do we form it? We use have or has plus the past participle. That's why you have to learn the past participle. The present perfect expresses unspecified or unknown time. And we use time words when we're using the present perfect. We're going to be using first the time word ever and then never. Okay, here we have. Have you ever lost your ID? No, I have never lost my ID. Okay, in questions you use ever. In sentences you use never. Okay, look at number 1. Have, and the past participle is lost. Let's look at number 2. Number 2, we're going to use another time word, yet. John has not eaten yet. Okay? Yet is used at the end of a sentence. Let's use another one, already. Joe has already left. Already is a time word. Has plus left is the, what are we talking about? Present perfect. Okay, now let's look. We're going to go and start using since and for to express a situation that began in the past and continues to the present. We use since. And it's followed to mention a specific point in time. So we use since when we're going to talk about a specific point in time. For example, an hour, a day, a month, a year. Let's look at the first sentence. I have been here since 8 o'clock. That is a specific point in time, since 8 o'clock. I have been here since January. A specific point in time. Notice that we're using the present perfect, have been for number 1, and have been for number 2. Okay, when do we use for? We use for when we're talking about a length of time. For example, 2 minutes, 3 hours, 4 days, 5 years. An example, I have been here for 2 years. That's a length of time. I have been here for many days. That's a length of time. Okay, so we use since for a specific point in time, and we use for a length of time. Now let's go into the simple past. We use the simple past. Okay, we use the simple past when an activity was in the past and it was completed in the past. Here we're going to compare the difference between the simple past and the present perfect. Okay, the simple past occurred at a specific time in the past. That means it happened in the past and it's over with. The present perfect occurred at an unspecified time in the past. Here we have an example. I was in Europe for 3 months. That's the simple past. I was in Europe for 3 months. Number 2, I have been in Europe many times. That's the present perfect. Okay, let's go into the present progressive. Okay, the present progressive does not discuss duration. For example, Juan is sitting in class right now. It's not talking about duration. Now, let's see the present perfect progressive. This one does. It emphasizes duration, and duration again is the length of time. Juan has been sitting in class since 9 o'clock. Since 9 o'clock shows us length of time. Juan has been sitting in class for 30 minutes. For 30 minutes. It's duration, length of time. Non-action verbs are not used in progressive tenses. Okay, and what are some examples of non-action verbs? Know, like, own, and belong. Those are just examples of non-action verbs. If we go on to 4-7, we're talking about the present perfect progressive. And this one expresses duration of present activities. Activities that began in the past and are still in progress. Or an activity that began in the past and it's still in progress. That is the present perfect progressive. For example, Juan and Nana have been talking for 20 minutes. The present perfect expresses repeated activities that occurred at unspecified times in the past. For example, Juan has talked to Ana many times. Okay, and that's a review of chapter 4. Let's look at what you did for homework last week. Get your books ready so that you can correct your homework pages. Let's begin on page 108. In 108, I told you to review the present progressive versus the present perfect progressive. Okay, for homework you did exercise 31. Let me see if you can see it. Number 2, I'm just going to tell you, see if you can see the answer for number 2. She has been waiting for 20 minutes. For number 3, Scott and Rebecca are studying. They have been studying together. Number 4, right now we're in class. We are doing an exercise. We have been doing this exercise for a couple of minutes. Number 5. You look busy right now. What are you doing? I'm working on my physics experiment. How long have you been working on it? I started it last January. I have been working on it since then. And in my notes up here, how do you form the present progressive? Be plus a verb with ing. How do you form the present perfect progressive? Use have or has plus been plus the verb with ing. Okay, let's go to page 111. Let's look at exercise 34. And I'm just going to read you the answers. Okay, for number 1, has been helping. Has helped. For number 2, has been sleeping. And has slept. For number 3, have read. And have been reading. If you missed them for some reason, go back and study the rules. Okay, these are the answers for exercise 35. Number 1 is A and B. Number 2 is A. Number 3 is B. Number 4 is A and C. Number 5 is D and E. Okay, let's go on to page 117. Okay, number 2. A is first, B is second. Number 3, A is second, B is first. Number 4, A is first, B is second. Number 5, A is second, B is first. Number 6, A is first, B is second. Number 7, A is first, B is second. Okay, exercise 43. Number 1, B is have. Number 2, B is had. Number 3, A is has. Number 4 is had. Number 5, B is had. Number 6, have. And number 7 is has. Okay, the last part. Okay, you were supposed to check your knowledge. You were supposed to correct. For number 2 is I started English classes. Started. Number 3 is I have wanted. Have wanted. And on number 3 also at the end, I have wanted to learn English since I was a child. Number 4, let's see if I can, it says, but I haven't found a good way. So it's the second part of the sentence, haven't found a good way. Number 5, our teacher likes to give tests. And then the second part, we have had 6 tests since the beginning of the term. Have had. And have had is in what? Past perfect? You have to go back and study that one. But we didn't review it in our review, but it's part of your lesson. Okay, and number 6, the second part, but when we moved to another city. Okay, class. Well, we finished our review. We checked the homework. I want you to remember that your final exam is going to be April 25th. It's going to be in Blackboard. It's going to start at 8 o'clock. You have 2 hours from 8 to 10 o'clock. Okay, it's going to be 50 questions, multiple choice. So you need to study, review your notes, review if you can, review the videos. Okay, review chapter 1 through 4. Okay, please do the class evaluations. Check your EPCC email. Okay, and this is the information you will need to do the class evaluations. You need the passcode RM23768. The link is IEP 0131. Ramirez Maria C. 23768. Okay, the evaluations close on April 20th. All right. Well, again, study for the final. Stay safe and healthy, and I hope to see you soon.